welcome to Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
Where we got new play toys today, folks. I don't know if you're checking this out, but we're excited to, we not only get to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ and biblical worldview, but we get to do it on these fun toys, which I'm not going to touch because every time I touch electronic stuff, disaster happens. But I want to thank our wonderful production manager. I don't know what official title we have for Matt.
Creative director.
What's that?
Creative director.
Creative director. That sounds really fancy.
Very cool. Yeah.
He's being creative with this stuff.
Yes.
Good job. Good job, Matt. So if you hear great quality today, sound quality, you can give Matt a hug on Sunday. But anyway.
We're about clarity, right? Starting
we're talking
with
about
clarity in the sound. Yes.
Yes, no fog.
Crystal clear, yes.
So as you know, I was gone this week, and I'm not going to make you too jealous.
Yeah, you avoided the ice storm we had.
Yeah, I avoided the
Sunday.
ice, but everybody think I went south. I was down at a great NRP church.
Yeah.
Chad Cochran, pastor down there, a church called Generations Church. Chad, as you know, was one of our NRP missionaries to Thailand. That's how we got kind of connected there and did a great job. And now he's taken the baton from his father, just like I took the baton from my father, and doing an amazing work there. So we got to encourage the, Marin went with me, we got to encourage the serve team with a big banquet they have at the end of the year or beginning of the new year to thank all their servant leaders, kind of like we've done in the past. And then also Sunday was a big faith push for, believing God for 2023. And in between all of that, now this is where you're going to get jealous. In between all of that,
You're going to mention food, right?
I'm going to mention food. The weather was warmer, but it was raining and it was kind of dreary.
Rain, not some rain.
We roughed it. I would have preferred an icy parking lot at home, but anyway, we had some great Cajun food. Cajuns know how to eat. In fact, they eat everything. Brother Rod says if they find roadkill, they might even throw that in a pot.
As long as just don't tell me what it is.
I didn't eat roadkill. I had some good shrimp, some good fish, and then my grandma Johnson used to make incredible seafood gumbo.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. I grew up on the East Coast, and not that Virginia is like the mecca of seafood, but it's at the coast.
Right, it's close to the water.
Moving to the Midwest, seafood, we got great pizza, we got like roast beef.
You don't like fish, frozen fish sticks?
But seafood is just not really a Midwest thing because we are landlocked, right? I guess we do have the Michigan,
Lake Michigan.
ocean
Come on.
up north,
Yes.
but it's not quite the same as seafood.
No, it's true.
So,
it is true.
yeah.
When you catch it in the morning and it's on your plate at dinner time, that doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
So anyway, but what I heard we had a packed house or a big crowd for Sunday.
Pastor Aaron did an awesome job preaching.
Yeah,
so.
I haven't been able to listen to the podcast yet, but if you get a chance, check it out.
Yep.
I'm going to listen to it this week, as I do. I always enjoy hearing you guys share when I'm out of town. So I'll be back at the pulpit this Sunday as we continue our series on the Gospel of Mark. But I've been getting good feedback. People are enjoying it and we're having a good time. So let's jump in to where we've been this month. We've been talking a lot about resolutions and really kicking your new year off with some fresh vision and goals, and then how to make sure we don't fall flat on our face. Yeah. We talked about being really intentional about wanting to make an impact with our lives, and that's a godly thing. So I hope that you have a burning desire to make your life count, because certainly that's the starting place. Then we talked about the power of our beliefs and how our beliefs can either help serve that purpose or can sabotage it. So make sure you're listening to yourself, listen to your self-talk, what you're saying about yourself, your abilities, who you are, your identity, your goals. All of those things are so important to get in touch with. And you can go back and check out some of our previous podcasts because it's really been a good practical series. Last week when we were together, we talked about owning our dreams. What's that all about? Owning your dreams.
The whole idea is, when you dream of a crazy vision, it doesn't just come. It's not like a genie in a bottle. It just comes to pass by itself.
Right.
Somebody has to own it. Right?
Exactly.
And if you don't own it, you probably have to pay someone else a lot of money to own it for you. And generally, that doesn't happen. So, in other words, you should take responsibility for the action steps to fulfill your dream.
Yeah. So we had a couple good lines. Somebody should means nobody will. Yeah. Someday really means no day.
Well, I'm going to give you an example. So I was at greeting the doors, during, I don't know, whatever service, first or second service. And someone come in and said, hey, you know what, the sidewalks is not salted. Somebody should salt the sidewalks,
Somebody
right?
should salt the sidewalks.
You know, and in my thought, I had a quick second. I was like, yeah, somebody should do it. And then I was like, that means, that somebody means me. Where's the bucket, you know?
Where's the bucket?
So it's just a very practical example, right? Somebody
no,
means.
that's good, because somebody never shows up.
Yep.
And then I like this, someday means no day, and sometime soon means no time fast.
Yeah.
So if sometime soon you're going to get started with something, it probably means not very soon and maybe never.
Sure.
So we said be an owner of your dream, not a renter. A lot of people, it's more convenient to rent your dream than to really roll up your sleeves and put in the blood, sweat, and tears necessary. But, you know, this is important too. You can be just enthusiastic, energized, you know, jazzed about a vision that God's put in your heart. In fact, somebody's called it resolve euphoria. In other words, you make a resolution and you see it, it's clear in your mind, and there is a euphoria that happens when we get a glimpse of something that God's put in our heart, something we want to do, become, accomplish, or whatever. But that euphoria still is that passion. It'll move you, it'll excite you, but it's still not the final answer. And we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, I really think that's a great understanding. Resolve euphoria. It's like the honeymoon period when you first start dating a girl, or you know, you fall in love, whatever.
Right.
And there is actually a biochemical reasoning of that euphoria you feel for the first couple of weeks.
Yep.
But then, like, whatever the research is, 5 or 6 weeks later, it just kind of dies off. And I think the same thing with resolve, right? As anybody's know, if you want to have a great, successful relationship, it's got to last longer than 5 or 6 weeks. When you as a pastor suggest that you have to at least go for 5 or 6 weeks, right? Any successful plan is going to be more than just short term, right?
Yeah.
If you want to accomplish something big, it has to go long term. So you have to have enough endurance to go past that biochemical high that you get, euphoria you get. Right?
And the passion's critical. I mean, you can't accomplish anything you're not passionate about. Right. It gets you started, but it won't deliver the goods. It won't get you to the final destination.
Right.
So we're going to talk about something today about the problem of fog. And I want you guys to imagine you got this really hot sports car. I mean, it is 0 to 60 in a split second. You want to take it out on the open road, and you want to see what this car has, right? It's beautiful. The engine under the car is so powerful. It will fly. But the problem is you get it out of your garage and onto your street, and you're getting ready to head out to the highway, and you realize that you are just surrounded with fog. In fact, it was funny. We were going to the airport on Monday, and down there in the Gulf Coast, there was a dense fog. I mean, you could barely see off the side. There's water everywhere, but you couldn't tell it was water because the fog was so thick. Now, when you have fog and you're surrounded with fog, the problem is you're not going to be able to take that car out and hit the pedal to the metal because you can't see more than a foot in front of you. And the problem with our goals is you might have this really crazy, awesome vision that looks like that hot sports car, and it can go and you can see it, but you're so surrounded with fog that it really never reaches its full potential because you're like creeping along. Yeah. And fog is a bad problem. Paul wrote about fog in 1 Corinthians 14. He gave an example about a man blowing a trumpet, but the sound doesn't come out clearly. It's like a foggy sound. He said even lifeless instruments like the flute or the harp must play the notes clearly, or no one will recognize the melody. And if the bugler doesn't sound a clear call, how will the soldiers know that they're being called to battle? So this is not physical fog, but this is musical fog. It's when you're sending out notes that aren't clear and nobody knows how to follow along. And sometimes I think our lives are the same way. When there's fog, we get paralyzed because we simply don't know where to go next, or we're not sure what the next step is to take, or whatever.
And I think just to kind of put the pieces together, right? So you have this compelling passion, you know. You feel like it's from the Lord. Your friends encourage you on that. You're excited at first. That happens to a lot of people. I see that happens, right? But you get that euphoria, like that excitement and euphoria. But after a while, after things gets, eventually the vision will get tougher and harder because you want to accomplish anything, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
So when that euphoria passes, you can't rely on that emotion, that passion anymore. What do you have to rely on?
Yep.
That's when you got to rely on clarity. And when you don't have clarity, if you're in a fog, that's often when the vision dies right there. It's like the book Atomic Habits, James Clear says,
Yep.
you don't rise to the level of your vision, you fall to the level of your systems or your processes. And that's really the clarity that you need in the middle of falling, your passions dying, waning. You got to look for clarity. This is the system I set up. I got to do this. I got to make sure these are the action steps. That's what carries you to finish the vision.
That's good. And when you don't, and when you're clouded with fog, there's two big problems we run into. I want to talk about those. The first one, and maybe you've experienced this, I know I have, is that fog clouds your confidence. When you can't see clearly, that's why you don't put the pedal down and go faster. You just don't know if there's a turn in the road, a stop sign. You don't know if someone's in front of you. We've all seen those situations where there's this massive, pile up on the highway because the cars are flying down. All of a sudden they realize, wow, there's a bunch of cars stopped in front of us, but you can't see them soon enough because of the fog. And the next thing you know, you're rear-ending the person in front of you. And I like this principle. Confidence is a byproduct of predictability. What does that mean? How does that work? How does our confidence rise with, I guess, our level of predictability?
Well, I think there's just a level of predictability that gives you a level of control. It gives you a level to know that, hey, if I make this move, there is a consequence that comes from that. Like, if I work this hard, I should produce A, B, or C.
Yep.
And I think sometimes what fog does is it gives us no confidence because you don't know if you're taking the right steps. So you can spend 24 hours working on this whatever particular project or a particular person, and it doesn't produce the desired effect that you want to.
Yep. Whereas
Clarity tells you, here's the goal, here's the objective, here's a strategy to get there. I'm not saying it won't be easy to get there, it'll probably be difficult to get there, but at least I'm moving towards the right object, right?
Yeah.
If I want to go from here to California, I got to walk. Yeah, it's going to take a long time.
Right.
But at least there's clarity that if I keep walking this path, but say, hey, we're gonna go, but where we're gonna go, I don't know. We're just gonna go. Well, you can drive as fast as you can. You're never gonna get there because you have no clarity of destination or the path, right?
Yeah. I think of that 10,000 hour principle that they talked about when people practice something over and over and over again to where their level of practice creates a predictability, which gives them the freedom to take whatever that it is to a whole nother level. Like we had the divisional championships, for the NFL this past weekend. So I watched some football while we were away, and you watch these quarterbacks almost making passes that look effortless, not realizing they've run that play. And they've worked on that timing over and over and over again. And you wonder, like, why? How did the coach call that? Man, that took a lot of confidence to call that play. Well, he's seen that happen over and over again. And he has confidence in the line and the quarterback and the receiver. It's that confidence that produces a sense of predictability. And I think in our own lives, whatever it is that we're doing, especially spiritually or whatever, if we're going to achieve goals, we have to practice the steps along the way that gives us the confidence that we can really achieve it and not wing it.
I mean, you talked on the importance of confidence. I heard a line from, I forgot whatever, it's an NBA player basically says, we actually produce the most pressure in our practices. So in the games, we don't feel any pressure because we actually make the practice harder than the real game.
Wow.
That's why you don't feel the pressure. You don't get the butterflies in games because that's the easy part.
Yeah.
The practice, Michael Jordan is famous for making, you got to play against Michael Jordan in practice all day. You rather play in the games, right?
You can't wait for the game.
You rather have Michael Jordan on your team and then in practice. But what that does is produce such, like you said, a level of confidence in them, right? Because they make the practices so hard that in the real game, you're like, piece of cake.
Yeah, we can do this.
But that's the goal. But that's the achievement of structuring our practices to be so severe and so demanding that when the real challenges comes, you're like, I got this. That's predictability.
Yeah.
Right?
And when you don't have it, I think just in practical terms, if you're struggling with achieving a goal and there's a lot of fog in your life, you go home. What are you like when you're at home? Well, you're usually irritable, you're frustrated, you're edgy, you're a little stressed because fog creates stress.
Yeah.
And you just think about driving on the highway, and a lot of people don't even want to go out when the roads are bad because you have to look, or a bad snowstorm or something, you have to focus so much on what's in front of you. It's very, very stressful. And I think a lot of people, when they try new things, whether it's life group leading, they've never led a life group before. People show up at their house, you're stressed out beforehand. Why? Because you've never done this before.
Sure.
There's no predictability in the pattern yet. You don't have any sense of confidence, and so you're edgy and all that. So I love this. Clarity creates certainty, and certainty leads to action. When people get clear, they get going. And so think about it in our own lives. Where are those areas where we're foggy? Because if there's foggy, there's going to be a paralysis that happens in your life. But if you work at clarity, and you talked a lot about this even in our own ministry, defining systems, processes. What do we do in this situation? Whose lane is this? What are the spheres of authority? Who's responsible for X, Y, and Z? What's the budget for that? When we establish all of these parameters, then people are able to run with the vision.
Yeah, no, I found a lot of friction and conflict comes not because people are evil or bad or they don't even like each other. A lot of times people do like each other very much.
Yeah.
That's not the issue. It's the lack of clarity. In other words, I'm trying to drive east and you're trying to drive west. We all love each other, but we just have different lack of clarity.
Yeah.
I thought my missions go left and your missions go right. And then we're just like, wait. We can fight all day about what road we take. Let's talk about our destination. Oh, you guys are misaligned on this. Let's talk about where we're going together.
Or I thought you were going to do that.
That's what happens all the time. Yes.
No, I was supposed to do that. Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. So what happened? Nothing. And that creates stress.
Or there's conflict because I think you dropped the ball. You think I dropped the ball.
Yeah. Or we both think we're responsible and we're running into each other.
We're running each other. So much of it is not taking the time ahead of the plan to establish clarity and establish lane to say, hey, are you clear about what your job is? Are you sure? Okay, let me send out another thing just to be clear. That in the front end takes more energy and time.
Yeah.
But man, on the long end, it produced so much more fruit.
And when everybody is able to run after their dreams or fulfill their responsibilities, they know what they're responsible for. It creates incredible amount of fruitfulness. Yeah. The other thing we said was fog creates a great deal of stress. This is interesting. It's been said that about 85% of the stress that we live with is due either to indecision or lack of control. Let's talk about indecision first of all. Some people live with stress because they simply keep kicking the can down the highway. They have decisions that they know they need to make, but they're painful decisions. They're unpleasant confrontations maybe that need to happen. And because they don't want to face the pain or the discomfort or whatever, they just keep pushing the decision off. I think in a lot of marriages, one spouse or the other is saying, hey, honey, what are we going to do? What do you want me to do with this? What's our decision here? And if a man is passive or indecisive, he's going to cause a lot of stress in his marriage because the lack of clarity creates a stress in everybody in the family or in a business decision. Sometimes there's hard decisions that have to be made. Maybe it's a personnel decision. If a leader's not willing to address the difficult decisions, it creates fog for the whole organization, and that fog creates a lot of stress in people's lives.
Yeah.
And so that's a big one. So I want to encourage you. Maybe you're stressed out now because there's decisions that you know you need to make, but you keep being indecisive. You keep procrastinating on those things, and so you live with a cloud of stress over your head. What you need to do is make a decision. Prayerfully make a decision, and it might be difficult, it might be uncomfortable, it might be unpleasant, it might involve relational issues, but make a decision, and once you make that decision, it's amazing how the stress lifts.
I just heard a podcast on this. I forgot one of the World War II generals said something along the lines of a clear decision, a made decision is better than the best decision. In other words, sometimes we try to wait to make the best timing, the best decision. But what he's saying is just making a decision, even though it might not be the best, is better than uncertainty like you talk about. Right. Because people can unite around this clear decision that people will go towards. Because often you're not going to arrive at the best decision. You don't even have enough information to get to it. In the process of this decision, you might have to pivot and adjust to come to the best decision. But often, because we're waiting for the more information or paralysis analysis, what happens is we make no decision, and we end up just living in that cycle.
And I think you're tying into a second thing that causes stress in addition to indecision. It's this feeling of lack of control. The lack of control coming from sometimes we're going to wait for the perfect environment, the perfect timing, the perfect this, but we don't control any of those things. Those are really outside of our control. We're almost waiting for the stars to, quote, align before we make a decision. And really, we need to make decisions over the things we can control, not the things we can't control. There are many, many choices I can make that I do have control over. Right. And I needed, like you said, make a decision now. It might not be the greatest environment, best decision, best timing, but it is a decision, and it's going to bring some clarity.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about bringing clarity to our dreams here real quickly. We have to clarify the vision. So we have to ask this: what do we want or need by when? And I think the what and the when are two clarifiers, because it forces us to define what we need, and then it forces us to come up with a timeline as to when it needs to be done. And this is an area we want to get into, something called making smarter goals. The Bible says in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so that he may run who reads it. There's something powerful about, first of all, writing down your goals, because that brings clarity in and of itself. Sometimes we can be like, I'm not really sure, I think I want to do this or that, but when you have to actually write it down. I've heard this in sermon prep. That's why I'm amazed at your sermon prep. By the way, Pastor Andrew's sermon prep, phenomenal. You write things out in a manuscript form, which means you're thinking through what you really want to say.
Right.
I write things out in an outline form, which means I have no idea. I'm kidding.
You used to write down manuscript form. As you grew, you're just like, I don't need this stuff.
So when he preaches, clarity. When I preach, fog. I heard it said before, a fog in the pulpit is a mist in the pew.
Yeah.
So if the pastor's not clear about what he wants to say, what's going to happen to those in the congregation? No, I'm kidding. We have different styles.
Right.
But I have heard it said that if you really want to be clear about what you want to say, write it down, because it's a discipline that forces you to really think about that. And it works for goals. If we'll take the time to write the vision down, you're going to have a lot better chance of succeeding in accomplishing that vision.
I just think about any contract is not like, hey, verbal. I mean, that's a degree of a contract, but true contracts are all written down.
Yeah.
Why? Because whatever you said, whatever you think, is not as clear as what's said on paper.
Yeah.
And there's some absolute clarity that's established when you put it on paper, black and white.
That's right. That's good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about SMARTER goals. This is an acronym, by the way, so we're going to give you some letters here to help you, but I think it's very, 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 very practical. The letter S stands for specific. A specific goal would be setting aside a specific time each week to accomplish. Like I give the example of writing a book. You might say, I want to write a book. That's a great, exciting, sexy goal. But you need to be specific. So it might be, I'm going to sit down every Friday evening from 9 to 11, and I'm going to write, and my goal is to complete one chapter per month. Now that is a SMART goal, because it's specific. It gives you a very clear time that you've scheduled and what you're going to do, and then it gives you a deadline. So that's important. Talk a little bit about measurable. The letter M stands for measurable.
Well, the issue with measurable is basically the goal has to be specific enough so that you know you actually accomplished it or not. So, for example, if my goal is to get closer to God, people say that all the time.
Yeah.
How would you know? Just think about human delusion. There's no measure to human delusional ability to delude ourselves, right?
Exactly.
So you could have a terrible week, terrible month, and at the end of the day, you're like, did I get closer to God? Sure.
Right.
You know,
right.
and I'm not saying that goal is a bad goal. I'm just saying, in general, that's not really measurable, right? How do you know if you actually succeeded in your goal? And the purpose of making it measurable is if you did not succeed in your goal, you can improve upon it. So you can actually grow. You can be accountable to it.
So who doesn't want to get closer to the Lord in 2023? That's great. But then, so practically, if you were telling somebody how to measure this, what in relationship to that goal, because I think we all would want that, what would be some examples?
I just had this conversation with a young man about some of the goals I had. I said, make it measurable. So, for example, that's break it into actionable steps. So, for example, like maybe you want to finish reading the New Testament this year. Well, you can easily measure that. At the end of the year,
someone's already done. They have a Bible reading plan to read the New Testament in 1 year.
You can know that whether you actually accomplished that. You can say, I want to spend, at least 5 minutes a day in meditation and just prayer and just, self-reflection, whatever it is. Great. It's a 5-minute goal. You know you've accomplished it or not.
Right.
You make a marking calendar when you accomplish 5 minutes. If you didn't, don't mark it. Those are very measurable. I want to have a great relationship, better relationship with my wife. Great. What does that look like? How do you make that measurable? Measure the number of date nights you guys go to.
Do a date night once a week. So we're looking at specific behaviors or actions that we can build into our lives that would help us get a measure on whether or not
You want to know if you want or not.
Right.
You cannot establish a scenario in which there's no ambiguity. It's like you take a test. After you get the test, your teacher hand it back. It's like, what grade did I get? We don't really know. Well, how does that measure
did pretty
anything?
good.
Yeah. But what's my grade? Well, we don't really know.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
Third one, actionable. And you mentioned that word. It's a great word.
Yeah.
Be more. Say you want to be more consistent. Here's an example with writing a blog. But that's neither measurable nor action-oriented. So we're encouraging people, begin each goal with an action verb. For instance, I will write 2 blog posts each week. Those are clear action steps. You're going to not try to write more blogs. You're going to. I will, and I'm going to do 2 a week.
Well, I just kind of preached on this. Jesus said, whoever does the will of God will be my family, not whoever says whatever.
Right.
At the end of the day, we are action oriented. Our accountability is by what we do and not what we say.
That's
right.
good. That's so good.
So at the end of the day, your goal has to revolve around not some type of feeling, but what you actually do.
Right.
And I think that's very, very important.
No, that's really good. Which leads to the next one. I love this. It's the word R for realistic.
Yeah.
Our goals have to be doable and realistic. So give an example of that. I mean, like let's just say maybe you and I wanted to make the NBA All-Star team next year. That's not going to be very doable or realistic because that's just not our skill set. That's not who we are. I'm past my prime. I got no leaps. I used to play lockdown defense.
It's not just there's a lot of the factors. It's just how high we jump. I think realistic is important, and that requires a level of self-awareness.
Yeah.
That requires a level of a feedback from your surrounding, for your friends.
Yeah. So for instance, you're not being a bad friend if somebody shares this crazy dream they have, and your friend says, "Hey, maybe start small. You know, maybe not start with that size dream. You know, maybe how about we start with this size dream,
right?
And let's do this." And then if you do that, you'll gain confidence, and then you'll take the next step, and before you know it, you can have that vision. But let's start with a doable, realistic, smaller, actionable step.
And this part, I think, is actually kind of tough sometimes because sometimes we get in a culture of like, don't dash my dreams, you know, don't
rain on my parade,
and all that stuff. It's like I get that too. There's people who are trying to rain on parade and whatnot, but this is the balancing of some people who loves you enough, and they know the context, right? If you say, I want to go to medical school, well, I actually know something about medical school. I went to grad school, a bunch of med students. I have friends who are doctors. I know something about that. I'm going to help you go through the process and say, hey, maybe your goal shouldn't be going to medical school right now. Your goal should be study for the MCATs,
right,
or finish college.
Right.
You know,
take that tough biology class and see how well you
exactly.
do.
And that's not raining on parade. That's just helping you find measurable things because you might not even want this goal that you don't even know much about. Right. I was talking to somebody else about starting a business, and I think there's all these fantasies about being a business owner.
Right.
And I'm just like, let me tell you some of these other side. Do you still want to do that? I'm not raining on parade. I'm just helping you count the cost.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. No, that's good because we get this idealized version of whatever it means to achieve that goal, and we don't realize there's a whole lot of hard work, and maybe we don't really have an accurate picture.
Yeah.
So start something that is more realistic, and then we get to the letter T, which is time bound. Good goals have timelines. They come with deadlines. And we've heard it said before that a goal without a deadline is just a dream. So what I love is timelines create a sense of urgency. And so you might not, sometimes timelines are real. Like if you don't pay the bill by such and such a date, you're going to, be arrested. Like that's real. That's a real sense of urgency. But sometimes we just create our own deadlines, and it creates a healthy sense of self-imposed urgency. Right. In other words, nothing tragic or catastrophic is going to happen, but that deadline helps us. Otherwise, if we don't have a deadline, we never seem to getting around to it.
Well, that's to me a major difference between survivors and high-capacity leaders. Survivors' timelines are dictated by the external environment. They have a bill they have to pay, they have a lender they have to do, they have a project they have to finish. Whereas the high performers got all that taken care of. They're not even worried about any of those things. But because they want to stay hyper capacity, they want to continue to grow, they want to continue to be efficient and produce, they create artificial deadline for them in their own heads. So they have practicing self-control to the utmost degree. They don't need external environments. They're going to encourage themselves to produce.
That's good.
That to me is the highest level leader.
And those folks are never usually living under the tyranny of the urgent because
No,
they've already created their
they're
own
focusing important
schedule
all
for
day long.
urgency. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's good. This one's really, really good. We only have 2 left here. The letter E stands for exciting. No one wants to pursue a goal or a dream. It's boring, because at some point you experience, like you said, the initial honeymoon with the vision, but then you get in what's called the messy middle of the fulfillment of that dream. And the messy middle is where you kind of lose sight of why you're doing this in the first place, because you just get bogged down. And it's kind of drudgery, you know? I mean, maybe you're writing a book, chapter 1 and 2 just was flowing off your fingertips, off your heart, And then you get to the 3rd chapter and you just hit a wall. And you're like, man, this is so rough. I'm slogging through here. I can't feel like I'm getting any ground. Every dream has a messy middle. So how do we keep it exciting?
Well, I think part of overcoming this is like experience. You really talk to somebody who's been through it. Because every goal, every endeavor has a messy middle, it has a wall. I mean, when you go run a race, the runners hit a wall. You know, they get the high and they hit the wall, and you have to push through the wall. But how do you overcome it better and better every time? You've been through it. Next time you remember, last time I hit a wall this time, and I overcame it, so I'm going to overcome it this time too. So experience, talking to people who's gone ahead of you to encourage you and counsel in this time, and says, hey, you expect it when it comes. You're not surprised by it, right?
And sometimes it's just kind of recapturing that original vision, taking the time to pause, set your sight on that vision, why it so excited you, and getting your passion level back in. So important. And then lastly, the final letter is the letter R, which stands for relevant. Our dreams, our visions should be appropriate for the season that we're in. Now, I'll give you an example here. When Marion and I were younger, we had a couple kids. I was a youth pastor. We loved going on the mission field for 2 weeks, even a month at a time. We took our kids with us. It was amazing. I think Lauren and Ronnie, our 2 oldest, could tell you that those trips changed their life. As we got older, we started having more children. So to go on a mission field with 2 kids was expensive enough and challenging enough. To go with 4 was crazy. And when we had 8, we realized, this is probably not the season of life to take our children, all of our children, on the mission field. We're going to probably have to come up with a more appropriate, a more relevant expression of the dream for the season that we're in. Marion was a member of our worship team for many, many years, and she has a great voice, and she loves to worship. But as our family grew, we realized that our focus really needed to be on the home front. And so we made some adjustments. She was willing at that time to step down from the worship team and to begin putting her focus on our family and on our children. In other words, I think our dreams in life, we need to make sure that they're relevant to the season. We go through different seasons. We're in winter right now. You lean into it, enjoy it. There's appropriate expressions for winter, and then guess what? Spring's coming, and then spring is different, and then summer, and then fall. I mean, I think that's the point of seasons. Is we need to recognize the season that we're in and make our goals and our dreams adapt accordingly to the season that we're in, so that it's relevant and it makes sense to the time. We've told people before, like leading life groups, all right, hey, you're having a brand new baby. Maybe this next semester is not a good season for you guys to be leading a life group. That's okay. Your beautiful son or daughter is going to grow up, and you'll come into a different season, and you can always come back and revisit it. But anyway, I think that's important. Appropriate dreams for the season that you're in. Now, let me end with this. I just had a great quote talking about the power of plotting. That's a mouthful. Say that 10 times quick. The power of plotting. This is kind of like the picture between the tortoise and the hare, right? Paul reminds us of how important it is to press on. He says, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. We could probably interpret that as, I keep plodding forward, moving ahead with the vision. Sometimes plotting just feels like you're not going at the pace you like. You're just putting one foot in front of the other. But there is a beautiful redemptive quality to being a plotter. And I want to read a great paragraph here by John Bloom. He says, today's going to be a challenge. We talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Mm-hmm. You will not make perfect plans. You will not work your plans perfectly. You'll find a bog of ambiguity that you'll need to step through carefully. There will be detours and delays. There will be equipment failures. You will spin your wheels. There will be unexpected phone calls and undesired emails. Social media will keep poking you for attention. Your indwelling sin and others' indwelling sin will throw curveballs at you. There will be some swings and misses. Your creativity won't flow like you want it to when you want to. When you actually get to the project that you scheduled time for at the time you scheduled it for, you won't feel like doing it. So what will you do when faced with these challenges? He says, plod on. Purpose to be a plotter. A plotter keeps moving. A plotter perseveres. A plotter presses on. A plotter knows the disappointment of unrealized ideals, feels the fear of failure and exposed deficiencies, and the ambiguity of too many demands and options and tasks. But a plotter isn't immobilized by them. He or she presses on in the faith that God will supply the needed strength, wisdom, and direction. Man, I love that, because that's just we could have the most perfectly planned SMART goals and still just deal with a lack of passion, enthusiasm, willpower, struggles, unexpected. You can lay your plan out, but we live in a broken world. I mean, emergencies happen, unexpected things happen. And I think what separates the men from the boys, so to speak, is if you set your eye on the goal and just keep putting one foot in front of the other, you're going to be successful in life. You're going to achieve the things that God's put in your heart. If you quit and you give up, and you throw in the towel somewhere along the way, whether it's with your faith or whether it's with your goals, you're going to disqualify yourself.
And that's actually a deeper truth that the older I get, the more I'm seeing, it becomes truer and truer.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I thought it's all about talent. I thought it's about who's smarter, who gets it more quickly. But that burns out. And it's literally like the hair you talk about. But the older I get, and I see the truly successful art, I'm telling you, literally not the most talented. It's not about the quick speed. It's about those who have a passion in the heart, but this passion, they do not let it wane, and they just keep plodding on. I see that in medical school. Yeah. I see people become great doctors, not because they got the best MCAT score, because they went to the best schools, but because they said, I'm passionate, I'm called to do this. Against all odds, I'm going to keep plodding on. I see as pastors, I see a statesman, I see that over and over again.
So I was going to talk about, especially in ministry, how many people did you see when they were young? They're incredible communicators. They had it, whatever it is, right? The church exploded, preaching to thousands, big budget, and then they're gone. I mean, they're like irrelevant. They at some point they compromised. They got they got the fog in their life. It disqualified them, and my dad used to call them shooting stars. They look great, boom, big explosion, and then where'd they go? And sometimes it truly is. It's the last person standing. It's the person who's continued to be faithful over the years, who, when they're in their later seasons of life, they're the expert at whatever it is, or they're the respected leader in that field. Again, not because they were the best, the brightest, most talented, whatever, but because they plodded.
They never stopped growing. They kept putting in that 10,000 hours, they just accumulate over and over and over again.
Yeah, so. And they've all been through the failures, which I think is important. So, but they didn't let the failures disqualify them. They just got up and they learned from it and they kept moving forward. So I hope this was a great series for you guys just to kick off the year as it relates to really getting traction and moving toward the purposes that God's placed in your heart, dreams, visions, being a better version of you, more Christ-like, better father, better husband, better wife.
Can I put a quick plug for Market Share that's coming Saturday?
Oh, come on.
We're talking about, it's interesting. This is a leadership quality that most people don't think about. But according to Craig Rochelle and Patrick Lencioni in the podcast they did together, which I highly recommend listening to, a newer one they just came out with. And to me, those are the two premier leadership
voices,
teachers. It's just amazing. The highest quality they look for is self-awareness. Because if you have self-awareness, then you will put all the right pieces around you. Craig Rochelle himself said, people ask me, what's the personality gifting type you want for my campus pastor? Because they have a very successful campus, 44 campus or something like that.
Wow.
And he's like, it's none of those things. We're not looking for the type A. We're not looking for this type or this person in this gifting. We're looking for someone. It can be anything as long as they have self-awareness, because they will put the right pieces so they know where they're strong and where they're weak. So we're going to talk about how do you develop. So here's the thing about self-awareness. No one really trains in self-awareness. I was never trained in self-awareness. Right. I didn't even went to school in self-awareness.
So we're talking about blind spots. We're talking about somebody who has an overinflated view of their strengths or a blind spot to their weaknesses.
Or their blind spot to their strengths.
Right.
Because you don't want to under evaluate your strength either, because that's not good either. So it's just that level of self-awareness we need to develop and cultivate as one of the most important factors of being a great leader. Again, something we don't think about much. I thought
so that's this Saturday,
at
8
o'clock.
8 o'clock at Livingstone's.
Yeah, Livingstone's.
And do you need to register for that?
Yeah, go on our website, lstones.org, and register so we know how much food. We have breakfast at Cafe Ethne, so they're going to be serving coffee and all these things, so for free. So please come on out.
Good. So a lot of practical things to get rid of the fog in your life, build confidence, and get you moving toward God's purpose for your life. Hope this has been helpful. We'll look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Spread it far and wide. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you.